But welcome in. We'll kick it off. I'm Eric from the marketing team here at Pangolin. We've got LODE here with us today. AVAX native silver and gold monetary system. We can just kind of go down the line to kick it off. If you want to introduce yourself, Nicholas,
Yeah,
and tell us a
absolutely.
little bit more about LODE.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Nick Prouton. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for the project. Been in the project for almost 5 years now. And at its core, LODE is really simple to understand. It's an initiative to restore silver and gold to the monetary system using new and innovative technology to make that happen. Project was founded by a group of like-minded people who believe that the best money that we ever had was when it was backed by a physical asset like gold. And so 5 years ago, 6 years ago or so, the core group of founders got together just as blockchain was really starting to take off and gain notoriety, and say, okay, how do we do this, and how do we create these commoditized and fully backed assets? And where we're at today with LODE isn't just a token. It's actually an entire ecosystem of tools, financial tools, and technology. We have our digital gold, which is known as our AG or our AUX coins. They represent 1 milligram of fully audited, insured, and vaulted gold that we have in one of our 68 vaults around the world. Um, and then we have our AGX coins, which represent digital silver, which represent 1 gram of vaulted, audited, and insured silver represented in our vaults. And then we have our LODE token, which is our platform token, and it actually gives a yield based on the amount of new gold and silver that we sell into circulation, plus the fees collected from that gold and silver circulating in the market. We have our proprietary mobile wallet experience, which we'll be announcing a debit card program that works internationally, so that people can spend and send their gold and silver like traditional cash, and anywhere Visa and MasterCard is accepted. If you're a business, we have a payments platform that allows you to settle with metal, as we like to say. It's called LODE Pay. And so what I'm trying to paint a picture here is that, LODE is not just a token or a coin that's put out. It's really an entire ecosystem with silver and gold at its core. And I'll bring it back over to you there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for that intro. Super awesome to get, or super excited to get more deep into it. Steven, do you want to do a quick intro as well?
Yeah, for sure. I'm head of strategy here at Pangolin. I help out a lot with technical business development stuff along those lines. Working with great partners like LODE, and it's been really fascinating to follow the project and to work together. This Super Farm Live. It's I think it's really cool to see the whole ecosystem and to really just expose users to the space with digital access to such a rare and valuable physical commodity.
Definitely. Great, man. Well, Nicholas, how about you tell us a little bit more about your personal journey and kind of what led you to working for LODE?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think if anybody was there in the introduction, talking about where I live geographically, I was already involved in tech and had been for a long time. And when blockchain technology really started to take off, it was a matter of finding finding a real use case, right? Like, there's a lot of novelty in the space, still is today, where you hear people say, "Oh, we created a coin for this," and you can kind of look at them and be like, "Well, why would you do that? Like, what real value are you providing to the world?" But when I learned about what LODE was doing, and what the opportunity was there, it was very apparent that this would be something that was going to last and had real legs to it, because you're talking about two of the biggest financial markets in the world. Most people know about gold and understand gold in some capacity, but silver is actually like the second largest commodity in the world. It's in everything. It's in all of our electronics. It's a pretty massive resource, and it had zero representation almost in the blockchain space. So it was like, wow, this is a massive opportunity to give people assets that are like known hedges against devaluation and inflation, and then expose a whole new audience of people to these commodities, and do it in a fun and modern and cool way. So that to me really resonated with the core of what I am about as a person, and what kind of technology I like to put my eyes onto. it was a no-brainer. I started off with LODE, working in the marketing area, and helping develop a lot of the core language that we use today to talk about the project. And over time, I've grown into working with the product. I worked collaboratively with our data scientists and our engineers to write most of the white paper. And as I mentioned at the beginning, these days I sit as a member of the steering committee for the project and as the chief operations officer for LODE. So that's a little bit about me and how I got to where I'm at with the project over the course of the past 5 years.
That's really great context. Thanks for providing that. And if anyone didn't catch the super beginning of the conversation, definitely go back to hear some cool nuggets about where a lot of the team's origins come from here. But so for those who haven't already gotten a chance to really dig deeper into the LODE ecosystem, I'd love to hear from you, how LODE works. What are the mechanics behind the scenes that maintain the peg around these tokenized silver and gold assets you guys have created, and how would you frame that for the broader community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're not the only player in the space, as I'm sure many people know. We are the only AVAX native players in the space at the moment, which I'm very excited about. Which creates an excellent place for us to have a nice bedrock as we go and expand into the broader community of blockchain. But yeah, when it comes to our assets, there's a whole bunch of different levels, right? Because we are dealing with a physical real world asset. It's really important that we have good business practices around how we manage and store those, right? So we use extremely high, like the highest security grade of vaulting for the storage of our assets. We receive independent audits on them, and we also provide monthly vaulting reports for our community for that transparency and that publicly. But we're looking to do more in that region. As I mentioned, these audits are there to make sure that we actually have the supply that we say we do when it comes to the circulating supply of AGX and AUX. And when it comes to the pegging bots, or when it comes to the pegging, we do have, trading algorithms that help us to maintain that peg. And the bigger the project becomes and the larger the liquidity becomes, the harder it becomes to push a price in either direction. And there's also consumer psychology at play here as well, because you have a real world asset that is redeemable, right? So it's not just backed; it is redeemable for the physical asset. You could get, if you came with us worth 100 ounces worth of silver, we would give you a 100-ounce bar. And because of that, as the project gains notoriety, it becomes more difficult to break the peg, because it wouldn't make sense financially in many senses to break the peg. Why would you? Why in one direction? Why would you push the price higher? If you knew that you could only get a certain price for it on the actual market, right? So there's multiple elements at play here when it comes to that peg. There's the trading algorithmically that takes place. There's the consumer psychology that plays into it, and of course there are the physical real world redeemability of it. All of these things kind of work in tandem to help us keep our peg. So hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it really plays into some of the you know there's true value. It's redeemable at the end of the day, and it's in very safe, secure, distributed vaults around the world, like you mentioned. And then there's that nice redeemability factor where if you do have 100 ounces of tokenized silver or gold, you can kind of actually exchange it if you were able to scoop it up cheap. That's how the peg is maintained. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for expanding on that.
Yeah.
And then this might be right in your wheelhouse and something quite a lot about, but for just the broader community and our own education here, what do you see as the specific benefits of bringing precious metals on chain?
Sure. Well, it's hard to screw with thousands of years of human history, right? Precious metals, gold specifically, but silver as well, has a long history of being used as money, right? And most of you know that at some point, most of the world's currencies were backed by some kind of asset like gold, the US being the most notable of them, right? And during those times, you'll actually notice that we experienced the least amount of inflation and devaluation. Your dollar could buy more. Compare that to today, where inflation is basically going rampant, and People are looking for alternatives to protect their wealth because their wealth is losing, in some circumstances as much as 10 or 20% of value. If you look at places like Argentina, it's what they call hyperinflation, where you're seeing things into the hundreds of percentile in terms of devaluation. Gold and silver, they stand their own. They maintain their value and they preserve their wealth. What an ounce of gold could buy you, 100 years ago, that value has somewhat been maintained, whereas the dollar has lost over 90% of its value. So why would we want to bring this to the crypto world? I think it's really apparent. Like, people want to take wins at some point, right? There's this really weird false narrative around Bitcoin being a competitor to gold. I view them as completely different assets, and they have entirely different purposes. To me, gold is much more like a competitor to something like USDC or a government-backed stablecoin, where rather than taking your wins into an asset that is going to lose 10% of its value in a year, or even 6 or 5% of its value in a year, why don't you just keep that in something that is going to be preserved for generations, right? It's a bit of a no-brainer when you look at it in that context. And a lot of the other gold-backed projects out there, they have just tried to recreate the institutional bullion market in a digital environment, right? So, New York hedge fund trader type experience, which is totally fine. But what we've tried to do is actually go back to the idea of it being for everybody, for it being a retail experience that you can use to preserve your wealth, but could also be used functionally as cash and to live your day-to-day life. So there's a whole bunch of opportunity for these types of assets, and we see a lot of interest in North America, of course, but a lot of developing nations in the world, and in regions that are emerging markets, are really showing a lot of heavy interest in this. A lot of interest out of North Africa, Latin America, these regions where gold and digital assets aren't just being used as speculative assets like we use them here in the West most often, but as actual currency for people to use. So that's very, very exciting to see that appetite.
I feel like it also eases the transferability too, right? It's like you don't have to put it in the mail.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a traditional stacker as well, all of the costs that are associated with storing bullion. It eats up space in your house. It's heavy. We're not pirates. We don't walk around with big coin bags on the side of our hips. Um, it doesn't make a lot of sense for this physical asset by itself to operate as a currency in the modern world, but by tokenizing it and digitizing it, you remove those barriers and you make it functional again, which is great. I mean, it's kind of going back to what the dollar bills were originally for, but again, using new and modern technology to make it happen.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I think all of us have talked to people who, aren't in the crypto space, and a lot of times they're just like, I don't understand what a token is, or like, is it money? What is it? And when you can actually talk to them about a project like this where a token represents something that's physical, is a really interesting way to engage people who might not normally invest in the space.
Absolutely. And I think in light of everything that's happening in the space right now, given in light of what's going on with FTX and all of its surrounding partners, the decentralized finance community and decentralized assets, DeFi assets like, LODE's AGX and AUX have a real opportunity to stand themselves up as viable options and alternatives for people. So I think it's a really, really exciting time to be in the space.
Yeah, that's great, man. One question I have, just hearing about all the setups you have with vaults and every token being connected to something, how hard was it to set up the structure for this project?
Yeah, so, I think it's fair to say at this point, most of the people on the call understand just how complicated and frustrating regulatory compliance can be with blockchain assets. So LODE looked at that and said, hey, what if we took the second most complicated thing, which is probably gold and silver, and we did those two things together to create some kind of super complicated legal infrastructure. And that has exactly been our experience. It costs millions of dollars to get the kind of coverage that LODE has gotten for itself, and it takes not just money to solve the problem, but it also takes a a lot of pathfinding and wayfinding, because in many regulatory places around the world, there is not a lot of clarity, right? So you end up operating at times in a gray space, and you're like, okay, well, how do we do this in a way where uh, people can have trust in us, and that, people can have confidence that we're going to, stand on our word, and and that we're good for it, and how do we also make sure that we work with governments in a way where we're not gonna get a cease and desist letter or something like that, 3 weeks down the line. So uh, a lot of projects went to, in the early days, I'm talking like 2016, 2017, 2018 time zone there. A lot of projects kind of just shoot first, ask questions later, and if you hit it big, you had enough money to fight a war of attrition and protect yourself. But Lowe took the slow route, which was to first figure out its structure, first figure out all of its compliance, and now that we've come so far, we're really starting to go out to the broader community and get loud about what we're doing, because we have the confidence to say that yes, we can operate in a safe and global manner.
That's great, man. Yeah, low and slow is something in the bull market. It was very easy to drop things fast and grow quick, but I think we've seen this year that well thought out and like structured setting up of a project is very helpful in the long term.
Absolutely.
Nice, man. What is like something that you hope that LODE teaches its investors about, or that they can take away from, investing in the project?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. I mean, some of it goes back to what I was saying earlier about devaluation. It's really surprising, actually, how many people today don't have a relationship with gold and silver, but it's actually an asset that is held by the vast majority of the elite, of the mega wealthy. Most financial advisors will recommend that at least 10% of your portfolio is held in gold and silver, and there's a reason for that, right? But when you talk to retail investors, and especially in the crypto space, a lot of time that education isn't there. They don't know, and they don't have a relationship with gold and silver. So, as people learn about our project, I hope that people come to see that there are alternatives to just holding things in dollars, and that there is real tangible solutions for people to protect their wealth from devaluation. If we can accomplish that above all else, I think LODE will have ultimately accomplished its mission in a big way, and it's a massive thing to do, to educate an entire space, right? When you look at the size of traditional like paper markets for gold and silver, they're nowhere near what I mean, they're so much bigger than what they are here today in crypto. Like even the biggest player in the space, which is Pax, it compared to the volume and liquidity of something like Bitcoin, it's a drop in the bucket, right? So um, education and around wealth preservation is ultimately, I think, what LODE wants to impart onto people, and that we have a suite of tools that makes it easy for people to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think the access for, a small scale investor to be able to diversify in these assets is super interesting. All you have to do is set up a wallet and get some funds on chain, and you can, having access to even fractional parts of this is crazy.
Absolutely, and I mean that's part of the reason why we also did small denominations. Like 1 milligram of gold is only around 6 or 7 cents, right? But and there's an intention behind that. A lot of average individuals struggle dealing with decimal points, like the local mom and pop shop running a bodega or something like that are going to struggle to figure out how to price their goods in Bitcoin. It takes a while for people, the average person, to wrap their heads around this. When you work with whole numbers, it's much easier for people to digest. And so when I say that these assets have been designed to be used as cash, this is part of how we do that, is taking that consumer psychology into consideration, um, as well as, of course, the Avalanche blockchain makes it really fantastic for us to do send in spending at the speed of business, and is really efficient for that sort of tokenization of real world assets. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Yeah, what could you talk a little bit about the specifics of what brought y'all to Avalanche?
Yeah.
I mean, we know for sure, but
Well, I mean, again, part of Avalanche's core proposition is that idea around tokenizing real world assets, and that and the efficiency and the low cost nature of the Avalanche blockchain made it really good. But and the technology is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But I think for me personally, what has really validated the most for me about going on to the Avalanche blockchain is actually the community itself. Whether we're speaking with Avalanche Labs or whether we're speaking with projects like yourself or other DeFi protocols or even just communities and peoples in that are involved with Avalanche, we see this overwhelming sort of like desire for us to succeed and to support us and to help us get wider exposure, which is really nice to see. I feel like if we had ran with another blockchain, something that was like Ethereum, which of course is the biggest player out there, we would be like another fish in the sea, and that you would be just another Ethereum project. So that support that is provided by you guys listening in the audience today, and by the different protocols, I think that has been really really validating that we made the right choice. In addition to all the technical benefits.
Yeah, 100%. And I think especially in market conditions like this, building on a chain like Avalanche, where there's a strong community with a goal around tokenizing assets, is such a huge plus going into where we'll be building over the next 2 years.
Oh, massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah. Where do you see LODE going in 2 to 3 years? Like, what's the best case dream scenario?
Well, and not dreaming too hard because we're pretty close to the reality. I mean, ultimately, fulfilling our core mandate of making silver and gold functional currency, we have an international card program that is going to be accessible to basically all the 166 countries where we presently operate, so that you can just buy your digital gold, digital silver, and pay anywhere where Visa, MasterCard is accepted. That's massive because now, your grandma can just go to the grocery store and make a payment, and she doesn't even really need to think about it. She just needs to tap her card and it's going to work. That is huge. And reducing those barriers so that those that are not technically savvy can take advantage of it as well. That is, for me at least, a huge part of our trajectory. I really see the project as we continue to deepen our relationships in emerging markets, like Africa, for example. I really see us doing a lot of really strong partnership work and strategic alliances there to make these currencies accessible in those regions, because most often they are looking for alternatives there because they're already either under the thumb of the World Economic Forum, or they're they're under the thumb of another major national superpower, like the United States or something to that effect, and that actually limits their ability to be an independent nation. And so with currencies like AGX and AUX, they have the opportunity within that to do that. So I foresee us gaining a lot of adoption in those regions, just knowing what I know today. And that ultimately, I think, is going to be our trajectory over the next few years, is just continuing to develop those markets. I would love to see us, if I'm going to sit in my armchair and speculate for a minute, I would love to see us overtake the number one spot of number one gold and silver assets traded out there. I'd love to see us be accessible in everywhere, every major market. But and I know that we will be, right, over time. So there's the immediate future that I know for sure will be happening, in the adoption, and then of course my armchair fantasies of being number one in the space.
Oh, I love it, man. I love the armchair fantasies. Steven, I want to throw it to you. Sorry, I don't mean to hog all the questions over here.
No worries at all. One of the things I was kind of curious about, just like really leaning into the whole like decentralized economy. What do you really, expanding on this? Like, what do you think it really means to have gold and silver tokens, like backed tokens available in like DeFi? You started to touch on it, but I wanted to give you like a chance to expand further.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, right now, a lot of people are taking their wins either in digital assets that have no inherent value, or I shouldn't say no inherent value, but you know what I mean? Like they're so entirely speculative. Or it's in something like that is a depreciating asset, which is central bank currency or a representation of a central bank currency. So by making gold and silver available in DeFi protocols, it's like you can start earning, participating in all the really fantastic things that DeFi is doing, all the financial tools that DeFi is giving people access to, like everyday average people access to, stuff that has historically been gatekept for by the wealthy, and now you can get paid out in stabilized inflation resistant assets. That for many people in the world, that is like the dream, right? And DeFi makes that possible, right? So that's huge. And I mean, lots of other projects out there, as I said earlier, are just satisfied with being, a recreation of something that already exists. LODE wants to push the boundaries of what you can do with gold and silver. We are really interested in all these lending protocols and borrowing protocols and staking protocols. And, we have a sister project who will probably be back in the near future with you guys to talk about. It's called the GS DAO, where people stake in their USDC, and that USDC gets put into a bunch of yield-bearing protocols, and that yield that comes out gets paid in our AUX. What a novel concept. If you talk to traditional silver gold bugs, people who've been stacking gold for the past 10, 20 years, you tell them the kinds of margins you can make with that kind of stuff, and their eyes would bug out of their head if they could get told that they could make that kind of yield. So, it's a really, really exciting space, and it puts us on the forefront of innovation, and it gives people access to tools that as I expressed before, have historically been inaccessible. So there's so much opportunity by being part of DeFi.
I've got like one question or two left, personally. Maybe Eric wants to hop in for the final one after this. But like, because we talked so much about the DeFi thing, because we have like I think the community has a very strong understanding, just because we are LODE and like Pangolin here today. I think we really see your vision there, and you've explained it like really like crystal clear. But one thing that I was kind of finding myself thinking about after having so much clarity on the DeFi side was sort of like it's like a very physical world question.
Mm-hmm.
This might be almost silly, but like, you know, as adoption happens, like LODE has to acquire more gold. And I was just really curious to understand like how that process plays out in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several different ways to acquire gold. LODE is required to actually have physical bullion in its vaults before it can mint any new supply. So, like these other programs out there, and I am not speaking ill on any of these projects, but they're derivative, meaning they don't have, they're basically fractional banking, which say what you will, but I think in light of all of the collapses from overextending oneself that we've seen in the FTX, like with FTX and Celsius and all these other projects, really illustrates that maybe that's not the best way to always be doing things. So, LODE always has to have that physical backing in its vault before it can mint new supply. And that means there's a constant pressure on us to acquire new silver and gold. So how do you do that? There's a couple ways. One, we can suck up the wholesale market. So we can buy from the COMEX and suck gold and silver out of the COMEX and put it inside of our vault, which is actually probably if any of you are familiar with the Wall Street Silver Initiative, that's a lot closer to how you would actually cause the price of silver or gold to go back up to what would be considered their natural ratios, because silver and gold are heavily manipulated in traditional markets. But but I digress. So one way is you can go to the traditional and existing markets and suck up supply from there. That is the easiest route. What LODE is actually working on right now is the next step beyond that, which is actually setting up supply lines with refineries and with mining producers to go straight to the source, so that we can acquire basically directly from the miners and from the refineries investment grade gold and silver. And that allows us to be so much more competitive, because the margins on silver and gold as a seller of silver and gold are actually very slim. So those two paths are really how we are able to keep up with the demand, is by having strong relationships with miners and producers, and by going to the existing market today and buying from the existing market and basically taking those assets and digitizing them. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, I'm gonna punt down like Eric's question. Maybe like just one more thing. Really interesting how it works. Like I think we didn't really emphasize like specifically the utility of like the load token in the broader context of tokenized gold and silver. Is that something that you'd want to dig into as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you load tokens right now they earn you a payout every 52 days based on the amount of volume of silver and gold that's circulating in the market, and also a little bit of the premium from load selling new supply into the market. So the bigger the project becomes, we get a really strong international card program. We do some strategic partnerships in North Africa, and get like really start to bring adoption on board. You can basically earn an entire passive income off of these load tokens, which is future state, because we're still only just in the beginning stages of launching, but the potential is absolutely massive there. So there's that aspect. Um, Things that we are working on within the load ecosystem is that as I mentioned before, load is a whole ecosystem of tools, and those load tokens are going to give you more advantages, more benefits, more accessibility, better returns as you adopt load's technology suite and use them to take advantage of the system we're created. So this could mean higher loyalty and engagement rewards. This could mean maybe even potentially at some point a larger yield. We're working on a whole basket of other ways that people can use load tokens as a utility. And they are all also eventually will come with that is community voting. So right now, when you have a project that deals with physical centralization so much, you do need a real world operation to in a business to really make that happen. As we get to a point of self sufficiency, more and more of that how the project operates is going to be put up to the community in a decentralized fashion. So hopefully that answers your question there.
Yeah, it definitely does. Thank you very much, Eric. I'll pass the proverbial mic back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Um, a question I have is, there might be some people listening who haven't invested or may be interested. So, do you have any tips for, a new investor trying to get into the load ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a very friendly community ourselves over at LODE.one, so that's LODE.one. Hit up our chat support, speak to our VP of Client Success, Tom Halapatz. One of the things that we often find is lacking in the blockchain space is, direct contact with projects or customer support. Not in all circumstances. Some places are great, but oftentimes we see that it can be quite lacking in the crypto space, and we make a really considerable effort to engage with everybody on a human level. So if you have questions, if you're not super savvy, that is a great place to start, is by going to our chat support and getting familiar and asking all those burning questions that you have. um, Aside from that, now that we've launched on Pangolin and on Trader Joe as well, it's relatively easy to, if you have Avalanche or USDC, it's relatively easy to buy in and get your first load tokens, or even some AGX or some AUX. So it's really based on your level of comfort with blockchain technology. If you're a beginner, if you're just getting started, definitely hit us up. Maybe download our wallet, because that's all optimized for buying our assets. But otherwise, it's a very straightforward experience, and yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with you. Having human touch points to be able to help people in DeFi can be extremely big. We have a Discord and a Telegram, but for a lot of users, and I still remember when I first started operating on chain, there's so much room for error.
Yeah.
And that's a really great thing that y'all are doing.
Yeah, and I mean it's ultimately extremely important because of the decentralized nature of the assets too. Like, this isn't just a meme coin that could disappear in a month. If you have in a non-custodial wallet and you lose, 100 ounces of silver, like that's not insignificant, right? That's a real world asset.
Yeah.
So we can't just like, oops, sorry, mint it for you again. So yeah, that human touch point is just so important when you're playing with real world assets.
Yeah, 100%. Great. We actually have somebody from the community who's raised their hand, so maybe we'll do this first community question here. Let's see if I got oh, I don't know if it'll let me add you, Totemic. Sorry. Oh, doesn't look like it went through. Sorry about that.
I can put a little question out in case there's anyone thinking about raising their hand. Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll bring you up to the stage. But the you kind of have your own proprietary wallet that LODE built, and you specifically mentioned just now about losing coins, and that seems like a no-brainer, right? They can't mint new coins.
Yeah.
I wonder what the special features of the wallet are. Is there something there that maybe would be cool to emphasize?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's certainly lots of great features on its way. One thing that I think is kind of fun compared to most wallet environments is that we are in the process of becoming a dual custody wallet, meaning that you can choose to go the non-custodial route, but we are also unveiling custodial wallets inside the application as well. So if you are somebody who just wants to participate in DeFi, but you would rather have it stored in safekeeping, so you don't have to manage those 12 words. That's one of the advantages there that we can provide to you, and that's kind of nice because again, it's wallet centric, not a complete exchange. We use third-party APIs to perform exchange services, so we can keep it all sort of in-house there for you. So that's a really great feature about the wallet. But while we're waiting on some questions, I actually want to talk about one of LODE's new products that are coming up that's kind of a world first as far as we can see. And that is that we are actually creating the world's first digital gold and silver NFT marketplace. So where people are actually able to buy very specific bars of bullion and bullion that are serialized and represented in the digital format. And there's nothing else like this on the market that presently exists today. And really, this is designed to be a competition to a lot of the traditional bullion market buying that you see on like the COMEX and traditional sort of hedge funds who need to manage supplies of gold and silver and so on. So we're really, really excited for that because it almost acts like a new type of bullion store. Like today, if you were to look up a major bullion exchange, you would see, oh, I could get like 100-ounce coin or something like that, rather than just a token. And with this solution, you can do that again. So now you can have a really cool stylized 1-ounce coin in a digital format. And you also have the ability to redeem it for that physical asset as well, or you can trade it and their royalties are baked into it and so on. So that's really a really exciting approach that we've actually received a lot of interest from on an institutional level. And again, world's first, and that's not often you get to say that. So I'm really excited to talk about that product, and we're calling that the Bull Pen. So bullion, bull market, play on words, the Bull Pen. And that will be going into an MVP. That will be going in an MVP for institutional players in December and January this year, and we're going to unveil that out to the retail market a little bit later on into 2023.
That's wild, man. I love that.
Yeah, very, very exciting time, and it could really be very disruptive for the traditional market, because we hear this a lot from traditional traders that that the market is ripe for disruption, and that there's more paper silver out there than there actually is in the vault. So creating an environment where traditionalists can come in easily and sort of do what they do best, and providing that to them with new technology and having that 100% backing guarantee, I think is really novel and exciting for them. So yeah. Have we seen any questions from our community here?
Well, we've got Christos from the Pangolin team who popped up.
Hey, Christo.
Hey, what's up, guys? Really enjoyed this space. Really happy to have LODE on Pangolin, and really happy we've launched this super farm. I was really impressed when we first met you. Actually, before we even met you, and I read the white paper. Matthew from Avalabs is not here anymore, but he made the introduction, so I want to thank Matthew for that. for our friends over in Avalabs making introductions to such a great project. But I wanted to ask because I think a lot of people might be wondering, and maybe some people might be too shy to ask. I know, for example, in our team, we've got a member of our team who's been collecting and storing gold for a number of years, called Abdullah, and I've been the same. I've been collecting gold and silver, physical gold and silver, for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I agree with you, by the way. Like, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, they put Bitcoin versus gold when that doesn't have to be the case. I think Bitcoin has its own use case, and gold has a different use case, same as silver. I think it's makes sense to kind of hedge yourself with everything. But the question I want to ask is about the redeeming process, right? Because I know that Abdullah would be wondering. He'd be like, okay, so I've got this AGX token, I've got this AUX token. Now I want to, maybe I'm a bit panicked and I want to get this out now. How do I do that?
Yeah,
What's the process? What's the cost?
absolutely. There's a couple different ways to go about it. One of the great ways with the bullpen is that let's say Abdullah is a big fan of collecting coins, or he really wants to look at the specific weight in the specific bar and has a very meticulous frame of mind about what he wants in his redemption. The bullpen is an excellent resource for that, because then you can just go to the marketplace, find the NFTs that work right for you, purchase them, and then send them into LODE for redemption. Which is a really exciting opportunity for that. So he knows exactly what he would be getting in the mail. If you come to us with AGX and AUX, they are 100% allocated, meaning that the bullion is there, but we have with that, it's what's commonly referred to in the industry as unallocated bullion, meaning that it could be any specific bar. So if you come in right now, our policies with LODE are 100 ounces for silver and 10 ounces for gold, and there is a service fee on there of 200 AGX. But if you come to it, but that's a flat rate, so you could redeem 1,000 ounces and it would still only be 200, 200 AGX service fee, and that's to cover the cost of contracting the vault and actually like the labor required to get that silver bar out of the vault and shipped off. So there's two ways of going about it. Again, you could use the bullpen if you're a very meticulous and specific person, or you could go to LODE directly and say, I'm going to make a redemption. Here's my 100 ounces worth of AGX, or my 10 ounces worth of AUX, and it's as simple as that. We do have vaults all over the world, so we do try to minimize the cost of shipping as much as possible. But you would just let us know where you were. We would have that profile on hand from you having an account with us, and then we would submit that. We would get your address, and we would ship it off to you. So relatively straightforward, ultimately, not too different from any other kind of e-commerce experience.
Awesome. Thanks for that, mate.
Yeah, and alternatively, I'll flip the script on the head a little bit. LODE also does make it, if you are somebody who is a physical stacker who has been stacking silver for a long time, and maybe you want to digitize your silver or your gold that you have, you can do that with LODE. We actually, in our earliest days, the only way to get into the project was by shipping us physical bullion. So that is also a payment option to get into the ecosystem. So if you want to digitize and turn your silver and gold into a digital asset, you can do that with us as well.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know you guys did that. That's really interesting. That adds an extra level of utility to this that didn't even realize you did. That's awesome.
And that way, you don't have to worry about storage. Your wife can get that closet back that she's been wanting. It's insured. There's all these kinds of benefits from tokenizing or digitizing your existing silver and gold. I know there's a lot of people out there who are in the gold and silver space, and they're like, if you don't touch it, you don't hold it. Totally respect that. But just saying, for those of you who are more perhaps on the bleeding edge of innovation and don't mind or would prefer to have it in a safe storage facility, that is a great option for people. Because then now you can treat it like cash. You can get yield on it, and it does more than just sit and collect dust in a drawer somewhere.
That's great. Christo, question for you. Where do you keep the gold in your house, for like if I was visiting and I just wanted to check it out? Specifics, please.
Oh, it's behind the toilet, man.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, if you could just give me the number on the safe too, just so just asking for a
Yeah, I've
friend.
got feeling my back teeth.
Yeah. You know, and I'm joking here, of course, but we have literally had people dig up their backyards, and we've received like gold and silver that has been encased in like dirt and grime, and you can tell that this has been, you know, this has been actually like stored underground somewhere, and so it's pretty funny to see the lengths that people will go to secure and protect their precious metals, and that can be a lot of mental stress. Why not take that off your hands?
Oh, trust me, I've had like interesting conversations with Abdullah about where we should store gold. It's we won't go down that rabbit hole, but we've even discussed like random coordinates. Um, but I digress. What I wanted to kind of lead into next is really about making the AGX as well as the AU. I mean, first of all, congratulations on the AGX. It's great to have a silver option within the space because obviously we have the PAX G from Paxos.
Yep.
But I'd love to see or love to kind of get an insight into what your plan is for increasing the liquidity for both the AUX and AGX, because from my perspective, man, with recent events with FTX and the uncertainty in the market, I've been sitting comfortably in PAX G mostly, to be honest.
Yep.
But I had to like move back to Ethereum, and that wasn't ideal because obviously the user experience in Avalanche, like it's just the C chain is so much better to use than Ethereum. So I'd love to see you guys succeed, and I kind of want to have an insight into how you plan on succeeding in the liquidity perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's several sides to it. We are gonna bring farms to the table in the initial days. Just again, it's great marketing. It's a great opportunity for people to get their first little bits of gold and silver and take part and help us bootstrap the initial liquidity. So those will be coming pretty quickly here. But it's that's not enough because ultimately, what you do in those kinds of situations when you bootstrap liquidity like that is you give people a bunch of incentives, and of course they're going to want to sell that incentives, or at least a good chunk of people are going to want to sell that incentives. So you need to create an environment where you have both buyers and sellers. And that comes in a number of different ways. One way that we are going to be doing is the strategic partnerships. Again, working with like investment houses and bodies of people in regions of the world that have like huge catalogs of clientele, and tapping those people into our wallet, whether we white label it or whether we just have a different kind of relationship. What that does is that brings people who are buyers to the table in a big way. That brings new audiences of people who are interested in making purchases in silver and gold. You have card programs where you're always guaranteeing, like the card program that I was talking about earlier. This always ensures that you will have a constant circulation of gold and silver being bought. Because people need to buy the asset so they can put it into their wallet so that they can use it onto their card, and then similarly they need to sell the asset in order to make a payment. So this creates a nice two-way street where you're constantly buying and selling, which is what you want. That's what liquidity is, means you have buyers and sellers. And then you have really interesting DeFi protocols like the GS DAO that I mentioned earlier, where people are actually staking in USDC. That USDC is getting staked into yield-bearing liquidity protocols, and then the yield that comes out of that gets purchased and transitioned into AUX, and that happens like clockwork. So you're creating a constant buying pressure in the market as well. So these kinds of strategic partnerships, these kinds of opportunities, and all of these different initiatives in tandem with really strong marketing is how we're going to take off in the market. And that, part of what's going to be a big focus for me over the next year is going to all the protocols that exist out there and saying, hey, what about offering digital gold and silver on your platform? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. Obviously, nothing is a 100% sure thing. Nobody has a crystal ball, but based on the appetite that we're seeing from people, we think that there's a real interest for this, and we're really focused on DeFi, which I think again a lot of other silver and gold projects, it's of a less concern for them. Like I love Paxi. Those guys are very focused on institutional players first and foremost. That's how they make most of their money. They do get included in some DeFi projects, but it's not really like the most active pursuit of their time, right? And whereas Load, we really want to be there. We want to be everywhere. So
Love that, man. That's awesome. And yeah, for anybody who's listening who missed the announcement last week, we launched a super farm with Load. So it's the Load token, their governance token, and USDC, and you can earn double rewards in PNG and the Load token as well for 28 days.
Eric, what's the APR on that right now, man?
Oh, I don't know.
Ooh, last time I checked, it was something crazy, man.
Yeah, it's pretty solid right now. And that's all dependent kind of on how many people are in the pool as well. But it looks like right now it's at close to 1,000% APR, which is awesome. Yeah. Yeah, man. DeFi,
it's a good thing. And then at the end of the day, you get the added benefit of getting free payouts in gold and silver for holding that Load token as well. So now really is the time, guys.
Awesome, man. I love it. Well, it looks like we don't have any audience questions coming up, so that's pretty much everything I got. Christo or Steven, do y'all have any wrap-up questions?
No, none for me. I'm looking forward to also eventually seeing some subnets that use Load as to pay validators with gold. That'd be pretty sweet. But no other questions. I think this is an awesome protocol, and it's really great to work with you guys.
Thank you. I know that the feeling is mutual on our side. Again, we've just been overwhelmed by the amount of support that we've received from yourself and from the broader Avalanche community, and we're excited to be here, guys. I think the future is bright. So I will say in closing to everybody out there, check us out at lode.one. Speak to our support staff, join our Discord and our Telegram. We're a really friendly group of people, and it's never too late to start hedging your wealth and protecting yourself from inflation and devaluation. So we hope you see you. We hope you join us. We hope you tap into these super farms and get that double reward. And it's great to be here, guys. Thank you again.
Yeah, definitely, man. Nicholas, I appreciate it so much. Everybody check it out. You can click on that Load sign right there. It'll take you straight to their profile, and you can find all the links. Yeah, and if you just tuned in at the end, this will be recorded, so you can come back and listen to the whole thing. We'll also release some cool snippets out over the next week or two. Great. Well, appreciate everybody.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick.
Cheers.
I love gold.